Attorney knows best. Intelligent interviews. Interesting insight. Intriguing information. Attorney knows best. Here's your host, Sean Bartley.
Good afternoon, good morning, or good night. This is Sean on another episode of Attorney Knows Best. Today, I have the distinguished pleasure of speaking with retired Judge Joseph Wright, a practicing attorney in Prince George's County, Maryland. He's been practicing for 25 years, or a lawyer for 25 years, a judge for 10 of those years in Prince George's County. Welcome, our guest today, Joe Wright. Thanks for joining us, Joe.
Thank you, Sean. That was really a great intro.
How have you been? I ask all my guests, how you been during these COVID-19 times? How have you been?
I've been great. I really have.
Mm-hmm. You were a judge during COVID-19 and you just recently retired.
Yeah.
How was it being a judge on the bench during COVID-19? I know in the District Court of Maryland, there are some criminal matters that you attend to, correct?
Yes, there were quite a few matters that I handled during COVID. I've made reference in my own, YouTube videos to the show All Rise, and All Rise has pictures of a courtroom with plexiglass all around. We did that. I did that. And it was exciting. It was different. And I've become very proficient on Zoom, and everyone else has become proficient in Zoom. So utilizing that technology has forced everyone into 2021, into the future, something we never considered doing. So it was exciting times. It really was.
Right. How long ago did you retire from being a judge? 10 years?
About 6 months, I retired.
So you've been out of the judgeship for 6 months.
Yes.
And the curious thing about COVID-19 is you still had to have hearings because of the Constitution, right? Explain how that works with criminal defendants.
Well, there was quite a few cases we heard, but criminal definitely. People understand that the most. When someone was arrested, they don't want to hear, well, COVID, you need to sit in jail for the next 18 months or 1 year or 9 months. They need to have a hearing immediately. So I was one of the few, I want to say frontline workers that worked pretty much every day through COVID, because when you were locked up, Sean, for your gun charge on Monday, you needed to have a lawyer. And then once COVID struck the jails, 3 weeks later, you're now asking me, Judge, let me out because there's COVID in the jails. And I'm saying, but you shot somebody. I don't know. Is it COVID more important or shooting someone? Which one is more fair and just for society? But yes, worked pretty much every day during the whole COVID crisis.
Yeah, I pointed out to people that as lawyers, we got a little break, but we didn't get much of a break. We were deemed essential service by Governor Hogan in the state of Maryland, and judges who handle criminal matters are frontline workers too, but nobody talks about judges. Nobody talks about the criminal prosecutors. Nobody talks about the criminal defense attorneys, and you all battled right through COVID.
Yes. Along with family matters, protective orders, peace orders, things of that sort as well, not just criminal.
How did you all stay healthy in the courthouse?
We tried not to cough on everybody. We tried to stay away. Social distancing. The courtrooms now have setups where you can only sit one every 4 and 5 seats. The clerk has plexiglass in between her or him and the judge. And just trying to be safe, really wiping down the whole building almost every night, taking every precaution imaginable.
Yeah, that's crazy. I couldn't imagine the stress in doing that. In my law office, we were able to meet with people via Zoom, right?
Right.
And we were able to do things via Zoom, but in protecting individuals' constitutional rights, you had to show up. And pandemic and virus be damned.
Yes.
Americans have rights, and you had to administer them. So it was really something.
Yeah, it was exciting. It really was. I mean, everyone else is home every day. Now, some people love not leaving the house. COVID, they're in the house. I think my wife left the house about 4 times in about 7 months. I left the house 4 times in a 4-day period.
Right.
And I don't know what I would do having to sit in the house every single day. I'm high energy. I love working. I love what I do. I love this area that we're in. So, I enjoyed it, but you also had to stay safe all the time. Mask up, mask up, mask up.
Well, I can admit I was one of the people that loved being at home every day.
I'm shocked. Knowing you, I'm shocked.
Well, so like me interpersonally, one-on-one, when I get to know you, I'm like, I'm going to ask you 1,000 questions. I'm going to share. I'm going to tell stories. I'm going to laugh. I'm going to be jovial. But if I don't, it takes me a while to warm up, and the energy that I get from being at home is great. And the comfort of my home and the safety of my home makes me feel good.
That's beautiful, because you have 2 cute young kids, right? You have 2 little cute kids.
I have two children. Yes.
So unlike your house, I have 2 grown kids.
You have grown kids?
This cute thing that you're referring to right now. Yes, my son's out of college. My daughter is in college in the basement, and she's mad every day. My son doesn't want to be home every day. So it's not the idyllic situation you have with grown adults. And my wife's home every day. So it's just 4 grown adults in the house every day, all day. Oh, pray for me. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So it's like COVID hasn't been a thing for me, except, I had a malady during the COVID, but it hasn't been a thing for me.
We all did.
But,
yeah. Go ahead.
You retired and you were a judge. And I had the pleasure of appearing before you on several different occasions, but nothing ever went to trial. There were always preliminary continuances, or we end up working the deal out through mediation and whatnot. I find it interesting that you're transitioning from a judge back to private practice, because as a judge, you see everything. You have like, judges are like one of the most learned individuals in all of America, unlike doctors who specialize in the nose, the elbow, the heart, right? Judges, you have to be specific about almost every area of law, and you have to be concrete in it. You got to be rock solid in it. And I find it interesting that you became a judge and then now you're leaving to go back to private practice.
Yes.
What was that decision like?
I probably thought about it for 2+ years. I am a person of many chapters in my life. I love goals, different goals. I am a unique individual because I do, as much as I love government service and helping others and doing what's right for the community, I also love music, arts, comedy, so on and so forth. Being a judge is great, fabulous. The job was like manna from heaven, but it's also very isolating, very limiting. I'm a public speaker. I've probably spoken at 100 schools, probably about 25 different conferences on a variety of subjects. But as a judge, my speaking engagements probably decreased by 95%. The engagement level I have with individuals also dropped significantly. And I knew I was going to go back to private practice. Then I decided to essentially retire early and let's go back and finish this next chapter. So,
right. Now, before you became a judge, you had the dream job as an attorney, and all the TV shows and most of the movies deal with this kind of lawyer. You were the prosecutor or / district attorney. You got your hands dirty every day with real life drama.
Yes.
How was it giving up that drama to become a judge?
Everyone who knows me knows I love being a prosecutor from the core of my soul. I loved representing my citizenry. I loved engaging with victims and representing them, engaging with defendants, trying to do what's right for everybody. I loved it. That was one of the toughest decisions of my life, to give up that job as a prosecutor. And when I decided to leave, I thought I was going to go into private practice then, but I ended up applying for the judgeship, received the great opportunity as a judgeship, but it always stayed in the back of my mind to, I want to go in private practice and represent a lot of individuals who do not have in their minds access to quality lawyers. Civil, criminal, family, businesses. period. So yes, but it was a great transition. It was a difficult decision, but I did love being a prosecutor.
Now, when I met you, I think it was either 2004 or 2005. We're in the Maryland State Leadership Academy or the Maryland Bar Leadership Academy. And I met you, and you were one of the keynote speakers during our orientation. And you were telling these wonderful stories, funny stories. And it always intrigued me that you were like funny and you were a prosecutor, and you were friendly and you were a prosecutor, but you were funny, friendly, and serious as a prosecutor.
Yes.
But I think before you became a prosecutor, you worked in private practice and you had some interesting cases, right?
I did. I've had quite a few, and I've always loved, let me say it to you this way. On the bench, even for the first year, I was trying to fake who I was. I would use my James Earl Jones voice. I would talk to the people like this. I am naturally funny. I am actually a comedian. And pretty soon I had to realize you have to be yourself. And people understand serious and people understand laughing. If someone gets up and says, I say, sir, what's your name? Trial. I'm here for trial. Just want your name. Trial. Okay. All right. That's funny. And I laugh.
Right.
And it's okay to laugh. But in the court system, we don't like judges who laugh too much. So, but I am who I am. So yes.
Yeah, I've been in the audience. So I don't practice criminal law. I practice civil law. And I've been in the audience for when you were presiding over preliminary matters, criminal matters. And I've been in the courtroom where other judges are presiding over criminal matters. And sometimes I've seen judges look at the file, look at the defendant, look at the file, and look at the defendant, and the crime or the charge that the person had seems unbelievable based upon how the alleged suspect is presenting to the court, right?
Yes.
And I found myself having to run out of the courtroom and trying to be respectful of the court and not laugh.
Yes.
And it's curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have one of those stories. Can I tell you one?
Yeah, please tell me one.
And this is no private information or anything, because everyone who's in the courtroom, they still talk about it to this day. A little bit about the law. No offense, partly. A young lady comes in, she wants a protective order. And all of a sudden she's crying. And I'm like, okay, ma'am, calm down. It's okay. Tell me what's going on. I came back from out of town. And so she told me I went into her home and her boyfriend was there and he had my dog. And I'm like, what? Yeah, he had her dog. And everyone in the courtroom was like, what? She proceeded to describe how he had the dog and what he was doing with the dog, and it was terrible. Half the courtroom's laughing. I'm looking around for the punk cameras. Was Ashton Kutcher going to pop out like you're just being punk right now? But you don't want to ever screw up an animal case, because the PETA will come down on you like rainfire.
SPCA.
All of them.
PETA. Yeah,
all of them. So yes, and it was funny, it was serious, it was sad, it was all those things. And you run a whole gamut of emotions. Show them. It's okay to show your emotions, I believe, as a judge. But some people try to sit there and not show the emotions. But yes.
Right. Tell us about, there was a case that you had mentioned to me about a bank robbery. I think you were the defense attorney for a bank robbery case.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So how do you get a bank robber as a client, first of all?
Because there's not many out there in America. So I remember the interview. I'm at the jail interviewing him, and I'm like, you did a bank robbery? I said, you know what? I respect you. I respect that. Because some of my favorite movies, what is it? Italian Job and Inside Man. And, to rob a bank, you have to have a certain level of cojones. So I'm sitting there and telling him that, and he's like, nah, I was just tired of frying chicken. Like, what? I worked at Popeyes. I think he said like 5,000 pounds of chicken. I didn't have enough money to pay my rent. I still had to ask my mama for rent money. I decided, let's go ahead and try this. Okay. But I still respect you. Then
are you serious? This guy was working at Popeyes.
Yes.
And robbed a bank.
Yes.
And this is way before the chicken sandwich.
Yes, before the chicken sandwich. All the good stuff. We in at trial, and it's really a long story, but I'm gonna give you the truncated version.
No, we want the long story.
No. So what happens at trial is the evidence by the state was that he came in, he sat down, the new account section, he had his own money in his own pockets. I want to open up an account. So the new account lady says, okay, shows her a note. She says, ah, and then she stands up and takes him to the back where the tellers are at the stands. She opens up the door, he goes in, and this is all the state's evidence. And the first teller sees him and says, what are you doing back here? And he tells her, you know what I'm doing? Hurry the F up. And he used the F word, which is important. And she's giving him the money. And whenever you handle any case, you learn the ins and outs of bank security, period, from cameras to bank money to real money, so on and so forth. I don't want to divulge too many secrets of a bank, but don't try to rob a bank unless you can end up hiring me. That's the bottom line. But she's giving him money. He grabs his own money from up on this area here, which is the bad money, the die packs. He goes, robs the second one, the second teller. What are you doing here? I am here doing what I'm doing. Third teller, so on and so forth. He leaves out the bank. The state then says he gets on a bicycle, because that was the plan, because bicycles are more mobile than, getaway cars and things. And he proceeds to ride away on the bike. Then all of a sudden, boom, big explosion, blue smoke everywhere, dive bombs. It was terrible. He essentially runs, comes across a house that's open, and he goes in the house. And then all of a sudden, the police eventually surround the house. And he decides to make a phone call. Who does he call, Sean? Tell me, who does he call? He makes two calls. Who does he call? First, he calls his
mom.
He called his mama. You've done this before, haven't you? He called his mama.
Community.
Exactly. And then he makes a second phone call to his
lawyer.
No, that would be smart.
His girlfriend.
His girlfriend. You have done this before. And the girlfriend. And so he's like, I thought about coming out guns a-blazing. I'm like, don't do that. Yeah. But then I'm interested. I said, well, why didn't you? Well, I called my girlfriend and she said, Louis, don't do it because I am
pregnant.
So we have a good time at trial. I call the first teller, and it's interesting when you look at identification and things of that sort. And one of the things when I talk to schools and classes and things of that sort, I ask people certain questions. Like, you've now been talking to me for quite a while, but if I drop down and I say, Sean, can you tell me what color tie I have on? Can you tell me?
Yeah, it's orange.
Because you thought it was, and it's different, it's unique, and so on and so forth. The first teller identified something, the second teller identified something. I called, but they said he had big gold teeth and no gold teeth. So I called the permanent gold tooth expert.
Gold tooth expert.
Expert on gold teeth. He testified he couldn't have done it because of the stress of a robbery and fake teeth and gold teeth. He didn't have the right. He has too much space. At the end of the day, he ended up being convicted. Okay, 3 counts of the way they charged it. 3 counts of the armed robbery, and other stuff. Still a lot of times. So you would think that's the end of the story, but that's really the beginning of the story. So, and he was convicted because of the jurisdiction we were in. It was 11-2 to convict. It was down in New Orleans.
It was in New Orleans. I didn't know you practiced in New Orleans.
You don't need unanimous verdicts down there until fairly recently. And that's a vestige from people do believe the caste system, so on and so forth, could have racial overtones. There's a lot of arguments as to why.
It went to the Supreme Court, right? And they said now
Right.
you have to give unanimous verdicts.
And so, yeah, recently now they have unanimous verdicts, but then they didn't. So we get all the way, fast forward this long story that I'm shortening a lot, to sentencing. And the judge, who is very quirky, he comes out and, you know, he says, Mr. Defendant, stand up. Mr. Wright, stand up. Okay. And the judge proceeds to say, because judges are really funny when it comes to sentencing. I've done it. You've seen it. You've witnessed it. You've probably even been through it. I assume at some point you were charged with a lot of sully crimes that we can talk about today.
Not me.
And judges usually talk about, you know, so on and so forth. This judge went into what you did was an abomination because you had the audacity to curse at the woman teller.
Whoa.
Not the crime, not this, not that, but cursing at the woman teller. Because I said he cursed at the first teller. Mm-hmm. And that was just an abomination. And no, that is just vile. And people don't just curse at women and so on and so on and so forth, which I appreciate and I get it. But this was odd. Mm-hmm. So I prepared my client for what you might receive sentencing. You're probably going to receive this amount of time. It's going to probably run consecutive, and so on and so forth. Stay quiet. You're going to get the opportunity to talk whenever it's called on, when your time is. Just relax. When he heard all of this, when the client heard all of this ridiculousness about he cursed at the woman, he then decides to yell out before sentencing, F you, judge! So now the courtroom is in an uproar.
Right.
Uproar. And the judge starts yelling, take him in the back and gag him. I can't believe he cursed not to me, but to the institution of the court.
Right. The institution of the court. That makes it worse.
The courtroom's in an uproar. Every lawyer is now in the building. Everyone's watching this circus. My client comes back out, and truth be told, he has like gauze, a big piece of gauze rolled up and stuffed in his mouth.
Whoa. And
it sticks out about this far out and duct tape from this ear around the gauze to that ear. And I say, are you okay, man? He's like, he looks like the guy in Pulp Fiction with the whole thing on.
Red ball.
And then he proceeds. Then the judge comes out to sentence him. And the judge starts yelling and never stops yelling. Count one. No, the judge starts with, this is a highly unusual sentence, but it is a legal sentence. And now I feel like Chris Paul and State Farm commercial, like, who are you talking to right now? Is this a State Farm commercial I mean? But he's talking to the appeals court. Highly unusual sentence. This is legal because not that he cursed at the institution of the court. Count one. 199 years.
What?
Count two consecutive to count one. 99 years. Count three. That can be consecutive. Thanks, Judge. Another 99.
And you're going to Angola.
Angola. What do you know about Angola? That's my place. And yeah, you're going to Angola. Yeah, 298. And all I said was, Judge, no my appeal. Thank you. A ridiculous story, a long story. And that was just one of the early stories of my career.
Did he get it reversed, the sentence, or did he have to do?
Other lawyers got involved and took care of all of that because it's just unfair on a variety of levels. And if you don't, and that's not a great story to tell you, I'm a great lawyer, but at the end of the day, he believed in me. He believed in what I was doing. He I gave him the best defense possible. But sometimes you come across the right judge, the wrong judge, or a client that decides to curse at a judge before sentencing.
Right.
You get what you get sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I always have to tell clients is, and this is tough, they go, you're supposed to win my case.
Yes.
I'm like, no, I'm supposed to give you representation and do my best to win your case. But when you go to a plastic surgeon with face cancer, they don't say, I'm going to cure you of cancer. They say, I'm going to try to save you, and your face might not look the same. And guess what? There's a chance that I won't be able to save you.
Right.
And people don't look at the law like that.
No.
They think that you're supposed to say, everybody's supposed to have an OJ victory. And OJ victories seldom, if ever, happen.
Yes. I mean, I've had some OJ victories, and in my course of defending, prosecuting everything, I've had great epic victories. I generally don't lose.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to lose. I don't prepare to lose. It happens though, because there's so many humans in the process. There's no guarantees.
No guarantees whatsoever. OJ Simpson, innocent or guilty?
We never talk in terms of innocent or guilty. Never. Whenever someone pleads, do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Yeah, is the question. Or not guilty. Yeah.
Not guilty. And was the evidence there? Did the glove fit, Sean, or did I miss something? The glove didn't fit, right?
Unfortunately, if they didn't plan it and they didn't plant the blood, he was going down. They had a bad case theory. I mean, if they would have changed their case theory and prosecuted it a different way,
right, and
not let a detective be the story of the murder and just let OJ be the story of the murder and let the evidence, the plain evidence, the simple evidence be the story, he gets convicted. But in my theory of OJ case, OJ had something to do with it, but I don't know if he was the knife man, because I'm a deer hunter, okay? And when you cut open a deer and gut a deer, blood's going to get places, okay? And if you so happen to catch a live deer and slit its throat, the chances of blood getting all over you and you tracking it everywhere are good. And that's why the OJ case was kind of suspicious to me. I think he has something to do with it, but I think their case theory was wrong. And I think they should have prosecuted him and say this guy had something to do with it. And we're going to prosecute him, but we're not going to come with this theory he was the lone knife man. You know,
Sean, that's so sad what you're saying to me. You're saying play chess with people's lives. No. I don't think he did it, but prosecute him anyway. That's not how it works. But I have clients right now who are pawns in a chess game. Wow. And I was in court. I can't say when, but there are prosecutors sometimes overcharge, or they charge because I don't think you did it, but the evidence isn't there. But every case I took as a prosecutor, I knew the evidence was there. The true power of a prosecutor is not in prosecuting a person, but in dropping cases against people that the evidence isn't there.
Right.
And this is not a game. You don't just charge people to figure it out. You don't charge people to let's see what happens. You don't charge people, I'm sure he was dead. No. You have to charge. When I charge you, I got you, and I'm going to win.
Right.
Unless something ridiculous happens.
I have two people I did podcasts with that were prosecuting attorneys, and they feel the same way as you. It's like, I'm only going to charge a case that I can win. I'm only going to charge a case that is constitutional, and I'm not on some, fishing expedition just to harm somebody. The facts are going to be there. It's going to be done right. It's going to be constitutional, and I'm preserving their rights so that I can get a clean victory. Yeah.
True.
But the OJ case, so you don't think they had the evidence to even charge him?
What I'm going to say is this, because I think there's still a lot of facts that don't come out of any trial. You see, even public trials like OJ.
Right.
If you know that the blood was sitting in a hot car for 12 hours or 24 hours, to me, the star of that whole trial was Sheck.
What?
Sheck cross-examined, and he cross-examined the blood expert.
Right.
I ran into Sheck years later because of my wife, who's also a superstar attorney downtown.
Oh, I didn't know your wife was an attorney.
And we went to a party. Sheck was there. Yes, and Barry Sheck was there, and I just praised him. I said, you were the reason why this was a not guilty.
Yeah.
Period, and you were great. Because if the evidence isn't there on a scientific level, it's a not guilty. If the evidence isn't there on an example level with the gloves, it's a not guilty. Period. I mean, it is what it is. Not innocent. It's not guilty.
Yeah, the chain of custody and the missing blood in the vial, the chain of custody.
Yes.
The blood came to the crime scene in the vial. I was like, are they crazy? They took OJ's blood and drove it to the crime scene. And there was missing blood in the vial.
Yes. Yes.
And then there was blood pressed through one part of the sock to the other part of the sock.
Yeah.
And he tore him up. Barry Scheck tore him up.
If a detective today gathers blood and puts it in his pocket, gets in his car, puts it in the glove compartment, sits for a day,
can't use the evidence. Yeah, should never can.
Really?
Yeah.
So if you don't want to lose a case while the world is watching, you need to examine all the evidence you have before you put it up. There's no rush in charging him. There's no rush. So, if I am, what is her name? The two prosecutors on it.
Marsha Clark and
Darden.
Yeah.
Marsha Clark and Darden. Unless to charge anyone on a celebrity level, you have to have all of the evidence. Mm-hmm. All of the evidence. It has to be there.
Just a celebrity, right?
Or public figure, or whatever the case may be.
Right. Public. So how long were you in practice as a defense attorney before you made the jump to a prosecutor?
About 3 years.
Okay. Was it a hard transition? Because I know there's a transition from prosecutor where you say, hey, man, I can't do this anymore. I got to help the guys that are victims. Mm-hmm. But you went from helping the alleged wrongdoer to helping the victim. Like, I worked in the prosecutor's office in Riverside County, California for a summer. And I thought I was tough and mean and law abiding.
Right.
These folks in Riverside County at the time I worked there, from I think it was it 1998 or 1999? They were like Jeff Sessions Republican prosecutors. And what I mean is, you got in a fist fight at a bar, they were charging you with every possible crime that could be related to the fist fight at the bar, and they were going to see what stuck. And I would look at these, and then they kept saying, Sean, you're not tough. You got to think about the victims. You got to think about the victims. And I go, it was a fist fight at a bar, mutual combat. One guy lost, one guy won. Luckily, the police officers were able to sort out who started the fight. We arrested him, and now we're charging him with a crime. I mean, they would charge him with everything, and to see what could stick. And that just didn't sit right with me. And they always had this thing about, oh, we're doing it fair. We're doing it fair. And I go, what do you mean? They go, we're charging everybody with every possible crime. And they were. They were fair.
And that's not fair. The one thing prosecutors do in a lot of the larger celebrity cases, public figure cases, whatever you call it, the ones where the world is watching, sometimes prosecutors overcharge. And that is the beginning of the end for the prosecutor. Because you're going to sit there and tell somebody this is attempt murder. Jason Williams case in New Jersey, it was an accidental shooting. Go with that. Don't go with attempt murder. If you're going to prosecute someone else, and it's just overcharging doesn't help the prosecutor. When I prosecuted a few public figures, I'll say this. I prosecuted through district court, which are the bar fights and things of that sort. And if someone gets punched in the eye, that is a second-degree assault generally everywhere. It's not first degree. It's not attempt murder. Don't overcharge it. I then started prosecuting drug dealers, and I probably know half the drug dealers in the DMV, from prosecuting them and then taking their assets and selling back their cars to them, asset forfeiture at its finest or worse, however you look at it. That's fine. At some point, I did death penalty. I handled death penalty murders, attackers, yes, all of that, whatever. But it's interesting, and the police always thought I was the strongest prosecutor because I prepared the cases, I called them in, I interviewed victims, interviewed the police, got all together. But then I started prosecuting the police, and it became a different ball game. And it's interesting because, yes, I started off defending criminals. I then become a prosecutor where I'm representing victims and prosecuting alleged criminals, and prosecuting some actual criminals. Some of them say, oh, yeah, I did it, but I didn't do what you think. I did it. Okay, fine, whatever, we can figure it out. Mm-hmm. But then I believe that there were certain victims of police brutality. And I credit a lot of this, and it's not that I was great, but I think I saw the wave coming, and I'll call it the George Floyd, Tamir Rice wave, but I was like 12 years early.
Right.
And so when I had the first police case, I said, I think I have the evidence.
Freddie Gray in Baltimore.
Yeah, all of that. And now it's every state from Buffalo to Seattle to LA, Chicago, New York, Atlanta, DC, Maryland, Virginia, Ohio, and I'm probably leaving out a lot of states.
Right.
But I was the first one to prosecute a cop successfully here in Prince George's.
Can you describe what happened? And then one of the things that I saw a movie about Internal Affairs Division. I think it was either Sam Jackson and Kurt Russell, something in LA, right? And it seemed really scary for the prosecutors and fellow police officers to actually prosecute another law enforcement individual and take on the case. Can you describe your mindset and what the case was that you prosecuted for police brutality?
I can, because it's pretty general. But you're right. The decision to try a police officer, because police officers are sworn to protect and serve. They have family, they have an occupation. And unlike you or your cousins or my family or friends, sometimes you get prosecuted, you don't lose your job, Sean.
Right.
You know, a police officer gets prosecuted, they can lose their job. So it's high stakes. And because of that, they don't just take a plea. This is pretty much all in poker. And the interesting, I guess, relationship between police and prosecutors are that we grow up with them.
Mm-hmm.
We work hand in hand with them. We socialize with them, marry them, have kids with them. We believe in, you know, the blue line and everything else, and it's a lot. So then when you now decide, I think one of my fellow comrades in the fight for justice has done something wrong, it's a big decision. It's a big decision. And I know there's a lot of prosecutors out there who don't want to prosecute police because of their relationship. But I feel as though they are like everyone else. If they do something wrong, wrong is wrong, and just try to do what's right for everybody.
What were the facts of the police brutality case that you prosecuted? It was in Prince George's County?
I don't really want to go too far into the facts, but because I handled not just one, but 2, 3, 4, 5 different ones.
Okay.
And I was successful in all of them, but one that I still need therapy over.
Whoa.
And the one that I didn't win, I was going to win at trial with the juries, because they were juries. I'm a jury, I would like to say expert.
Mm-hmm.
I think the police saw the wave coming, and a couple things happened. One, they realized, okay, Joe is serious. We need to start hiring private lawyers and other lawyers and what's going on, so on and so on and so forth. By the 5th one, this cop did something which I credit him. He said, you know what? I think I want a bench trial. That was the great decision right there. That was the great decision that I'm still need therapy over.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, tried the case. I think I proved him, in my own estimation, to have committed the crimes I charged him with. But the judge said, well, you know, because everyone is involved with police in terms of if you're in the legal career, so on and so forth, and we realize stakes are high. But juries, I realized 12 years ago, were ready to start convicting police for crimes.
Mm-hmm.
Because at least in that jurisdiction, they knew this wasn't just, you know, officer friendly and officer justice, but sometimes you can have an officer, you can have 3 or 4 or 5 out of the 1,000 that are criminally wrong. Not all of them, not most of them, but there's a number. Like any occupation. But yes.
Yeah, those cases can last and stick with you for a long time. It's interesting you talk about like therapy because I always tell people, you go see a doctor and you leave the doctor's office, your problem leaves with you, right? The doctor doesn't sit there with it. The prosecutor takes that bad boy home everywhere with them. You're working on it day after day. You're becoming intimate with the facts. You're becoming intimate with the person. The lawyer takes your injury on, and they're intimate with the facts. They're intimate with you. And then you become their advocate. You become their champion. And then you go to court, and then something weird happens with the judge, and you don't get a conviction. It's heavy.
I'm going to say even more so than that. Mm-hmm. And that is true. My kids grew up with me handling violent cases. They know when we're at the mall and someone comes up to me, they know keep walking. Mm-hmm. When we're in Target or Walmart, people come up to me, they have known to keep walking since the time they were 7, 8, because daddy does things where people come up and want to just talk to him and say things to him, and it could be ugly, and dad has always said keep walking. Mm-hmm. And that's what we do. But as I said, I prosecuted carjackers, drug dealers, and they still all approach me when they get out of jail, when they see me, and they usually come up and say, you know what, I respect what you did, I understand, so on and so on and so forth. But when I started prosecuting the police, it became a different level of anxiety, because it was so ridiculous to the point where it became, I was under orders to not stop for any police officer at all. If someone tries to pull me over, call 911 and go to a safe area, go to a well-lit area. There were actual threats on me. There was propaganda / ridiculousness that was talked about. So you need to be a senior prosecutor who was able to block out the nonsense and the foolishness. Oh, he's doing this because his sister's on the news or something. No, my sister does hair in Hydesville. Shouts out to Toya. You need your hair done. Exactly. But yeah, they Salon Plaza Hydesville. But they would make up things and say things and actual threats. I was always comfortable when the police were on my side because, hey, I had the biggest gang protecting me as well. But once you started prosecuting them, things became a little uneasy, very much so. And you know, it's serious, but it is what it is. But I was just doing what I thought was right. I was at the forefront, and in 15 years later, we now see the fruits of all of that around the nation.
Right.
Culminating in a George Floyd bill that just passed. So yes.
Right. The George Floyd bill that just passed. Speaking of judges, you talked about your successful prosecution of this police officer where you needed therapy. I had a bogus speeding ticket.
Oh, there you go.
Over in Western Maryland. Okay. and it was the weirdest thing.
Are you telling me you didn't speed when you were driving through the mountains of Western Maryland?
I had just got through. I just passed through Frederick. I keep saying got all the time. That's my go-to word is got. I just passed through Frederick.
You got caught.
Yeah. I got. And I just gone through Frederick, and I was on my way to Hagerstown. I had a hearing there. I used to be a big bad foreclosure attorney. Yes. But I had a foreclosure hearing there, and the police officer pulled me over, and I was in the middle of 5 cars, 2 in front of me, 2 in back, and some kind of way he singled me out. All right, pulls me over. And he gives me this ticket, and I said, and saying I was going 75, and I was like, I wasn't going 75. I know I was going 65. Anyway, I said, I'm fighting this ticket. This is a bogus ticket. So I go to court, and he's giving testimony, right? Yes. He goes, he was driving a blue 4-door sedan. He was traveling in the far right lane, and and just so happened I had a 2-door sedan, Toyota Solara, all black, and I was in the middle lane. Okay. And I wasn't in the far lane, right? And my strategy was I continued the hearing twice. I knew I was going to continue the hearing twice because I was just so busy. And I said, I'm going to continue this hearing twice. I got to get this thing set up so I can take a day off of work and go up there. And so it worked out for me. The guy never read the freaking ticket, and he was up on the stand. He recited all the facts wrong, and the ticket was clear. I was in the far left. Okay. I was in a black sedan
Mhm.
2 doors. And he said I was in a blue 4-door sedan in the middle lane. All right. And so I went over his questions and answers. And then the judge said, anything more? And I go, no, Your Honor. And then the judge goes, well, you cross-examine him. Would you like to present your case? And I said, yes, Your Honor. I said, my name's Sean Bartley. I drive a 2-door Toyota Solara. I was in it, and according to his ticket, it's a 2-door Toyota Solara. I was in the center lane behind 2 other cars. And I said, and his testimony today is completely a contradiction of the ticket, right? I said, I asked that this case be dismissed. And the judge turns bright face red. The state trooper turns bright face red, and they're like scrambling and they're looking. And the judge is like, well, Mr. Bartley, you're correct. He goes, I don't know how this happened, but I'm seeing that this guy continued twice. And he goes, and I don't remember the officer's name, but he goes, I know Officer Smith. Officer Smith has testified in front of me on more than 20 occasions, and I found him to be truthful, honest, and upworthy, and a model example for the Maryland State Troopers.
Yes.
And although his testimony is incorrect today,
yes,
I believe that his ticket is correct. And he goes, officer, is your ticket correct? And was it correct on the day you wrote it? Yes, Your Honor. He goes, Mr. Bartley, I'm going to find you guilty. What is it? Judgment before probation. What is it called?
Close enough. Probation before judgment.
Yeah, probation before judgment. Law. And I am going to waive the fine and charge you court fees today. And I was like, Your Honor. I was like, it should be dismissed. He goes, no, Mr. Bartley, if you'd like, appeal me. Bam, place over. And I was like, oh, I was crushed.
And what you're saying rings true through the law.
Uh-huh.
Where if the judge doesn't understand that sometimes police make mistakes,
right,
he will never understand why OJ was not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
He will never understand that a cop may actually have a bad day and assault somebody. He may not understand that a cop will use a chokehold when he doesn't need to. And also when he looks at sometimes defendants that do not look like the judge, you might look at the young black man and think, you remind me of that defendant on Law and Order last week I saw, and it was just ridiculous and so on and so forth. Or you don't remind me of me at all.
Yeah.
You can't be, you can't be not guilty of this. You have to be guilty of this. So there's a lot of hand-me-down, institutionalized bias is the word we're using in 2021, implicit bias.
Yep.
Stronger words that were used 15 years ago was just in structural racism, but people don't want to say that because that's a little offensive to folk.
Right.
But it is what it is. I have many judges. Now I'm in private practice. I walk into a courtroom and the judge doesn't know me. And I also practice in DC and Maryland, and the judge is like, well, you don't know what you're doing, basically. And doesn't say that, but kind of says that.
Yes.
And then, an hour into me putting my foot up in the defendant, the witness, the blah, blah, blah. By the end, the judge is like, oh, wow, now wait, where do you practice? Oh, it's a pleasure watching you.
Right.
You didn't think I knew what I was doing when I walked in off of this. And now you're on my side. Okay, great. But the same can apply for defendants. One of my favorite defendants, I called him to the stand, young black male, and he got in a chair and he slouched a little bit. And I said, please state your name for the record. And the judge started yelling at him, sit up! Where do you think this is? And she called him before he even testified because she saw a young black male slouched down in the chair. It was terrible. It was terrible. And when you get down to these speeding tickets, like people like you who speed through Western Maryland, you're not from around here, are you, Sean? You don't look like all my neighbors that I know.
Right.
And you're sitting here speeding through my beautiful mountains. I get it, dude.
Yeah.
I get it. And you were railroaded, and a lawyer may have helped you.
It's
a local lawyer may have helped you.
Yeah. Yeah. I I can tell you stories about Frederick and some preposterous rulings.
I hear how you said it. I hear how you said it. Yes.
And it's sometimes shocks the conscience, but for the most part, I find judges are fair for the most part, and
Sure.
they're well read for the most part.
Sure.
I had a crazy case in Carroll County, and this judge was so well prepared and so well read and so unbiased, it shocked the conscience. I was on the losing side. I had a tough case anyway. I was on the losing side, but he was so well prepared and
Yes.
so fair. It blew my mind. And I was satisfied with what happened because he was fair. I didn't like to lose.
Right.
And sometimes we have losers, and client comes to you and says, you got a loser case. What I can do is try to mitigate it by going to trial or trying to solve it, but you don't want it to go to trial. But the judge was fair in this case, right? But for the most part, they're fair. Do you have any success stories that you like to talk about as a prosecutor of a notorious case?
Ooh.
Because you did death penalty. That's scary.
I did. And you can use the word one, but it is what it is. I prosecuted numerous drug defendants who saw me later and gave up that life. I prosecuted gang members. I have quite a few success stories in terms of that. I will tell you this. As a judge, I had a young man in front of me, and he committed some type of crime, and most judges would have sent him to jail for a period of time, maybe not a lot of time, 6 months, 90 days, whatever case may be. I looked at him, I looked at his record, and I said, you know what? I think I may do society better by forcing him to do a book report, a real book report. I gave him the book Grit by, I believe it's Angela McCullough, to learn how to get your life together, self-improvement with a little bit of work. He was already in college, community college. His professor came. I said, now, professor, you have to act as his probation agent. You have to look out for him, make sure he doesn't miss class, make sure he gets his book report done. He came back, I guess a month later, read the book, outlined it, the lessons he learned, how he's going to apply it to his life. That's a real win. I mean, that's a real win for me. Beside the people I've locked up for, 25 mandatory, 40 mandatory, 10 mandatory. Back when I was prosecuting drug cases, we had mandatory sentencing. It had to follow. I have more people that were prosecuted on mandatory time than anyone you'll ever meet.
Whoa.
And that's not really right. And
Really?
I know it's right now.
You don't think mandatories are right?
Because sometimes when you look at what the first strike was, the first strike may have been this. The second strike may have been something minor. By the time your third strike, you look at 25 mandatory.
25 to L. Yeah.
And then you go to jail because you would go to prison because of these drug convictions, small minor hand-to-hand transactions, which is drug dealing. Don't get me wrong. I do not like drug dealers. I do not like carjackers. I get it. But when you realize that they're spending more time in jail than actual murderers, clearly any white collar defendants and people who, insurgents at the Capitol and all this kind of ridiculousness.
$20 million, they get 5 years. Slap
exactly. I don't think any of the insurgents will probably see more than a little bit of time.
I don't know about that.
Murderers get out still with parole. Other carjackers get out on parole. There are some positive benefits to allowing a person to think that, there's a chance of you getting out. When you talk about 25 mandatory, 40 years mandatory, you going in when you're 20, you're not going to basically get out till you are maybe not getting out. And it's a lot. I do read the paper every day, Washington Post every day as well. And Paris Glendening, Governor Glendening, he had a large op-ed in the paper recently that said he was the governor during this war on crime days, and he refused to even consider parole for these violent offenders, and period. No pardons at all.
Glendening gave no pardons?
No.
He was a Democrat.
Don't make me come through this internet, because I have the app to come through there and choke you out. But the reality is, he wrote a large op-ed that said I was wrong.
Wow.
I was wrong. I was wrong. And our criminal justice system needs to be overhauled, number one. But number two, I don't know how much time we have left, but the reality is I saw so many travesties, even as a judge. I knew I wanted to go back out and represent people and represent and make sure that, justice occurs. Because there's still a lot of travesties that occur in the system. And without the right lawyer, you can get railroaded by a judge, by police, by your ex-girlfriend who doesn't like you, by your ex-boyfriend who is spiteful, by just a factual situation or coincidence, so on and so forth, circumstantial. I heard that today. This case is highly circumstantial, Your Honor. We need to make sure that mistakes do not occur any longer in the system, or at least do the best I can to help individuals charged with crimes, at least. But even on the civil front, the family front, I handle divorces and custody. It is earth-shattering how family law, when it comes down to a decision where a child should be, one side has a lawyer, the other side does not. Do you know who generally will win that fight?
It's always the gunfighter, the lawyer. People,
right. Don't bring a knife to a gunfight, you would say. And in court, these are gunfights. Just because you watch Law and Order, just because you watched a couple episodes of whatever it is, doesn't mean you can handle your case.
Yep.
And you shouldn't. And so I try to be fair for people in terms of charging. Some lawyers, them, you call them up and they want 30 grand up front before I can get into the case. I want 20 grand up front. Who has that kind of money?
Yeah.
Some people do. And if you have it, call me. Don't get me wrong.
Yep. Don't get you wrong.
I represent businesses who have it, but I represent a lot of businesses, a lot of defendants. Yes, I make good money, but I have good bills as well. And you know what? Can you represent me for only this amount? And I usually say yes. Because there is a gray area between qualifying for legal aid services like the public defender and, OJ, who could go dollar for dollar with anybody.
Right, anybody.
Those people in the middle, they need good representation that they can afford and not lose their house. And that's what I'm here for. That's why I went back to private practice.
Back to private practice. Do you enjoy criminal law more than civil
law? You're making me choose kids. We don't choose between our kids, don't we? Okay, that's a lie. We do.
I don't have the guts for criminal law. I used to think I was tough. I was like, man, I don't have the guts for criminal law. And then second, I don't want a client coming in and stealing one of my nice designer pins.
No, I do love criminal law. I do love family law. I mean, criminal law is how I was known for a long time. I love representing businesses. I love litigation. I love being in the fight. Period. But I do love criminals. You're gonna make me choose. You're not making me choose. I love.
I'm not gonna make you choose.
I do not love bankruptcy. I do not do administrative law. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, there's some litigation in bankruptcy too. I mean,
that's not litigation.
I can't get there. I mean, I had a client I had to take through the negotiating with the trustee, so the U.S. Marshal didn't have to come kick down her door and kick her out. So that was scary.
Exactly.
Because the U.S. Marshals love to kick down doors.
Yes.
Who has more power than the U.S. Marshals? Nobody. You better watch out. So, you are a public speaker. I think you even said that you had interest in comedy, right?
Yes.
Do you do stand-up comedy?
Yes.
You do? So sometimes I tell stories and I'm laughing to people. And people say, how can you laugh? I go, this is what TV dramas are made out of.
Yes.
This is unbelievable. Yes. Or I'll have somebody who's really smart, a doctor, right? Do something that you can't even fathom doing as a lawyer. Yes. And it's funny.
Yes.
Or people think they're smarter than a lawyer. And I go, and I would say, I went to 4 years undergrad and I studied 2,000 years of jurisprudence. And the law is based upon what happened before and the predictable nature of man in their wrongdoing. And I studied it and I was examined upon it. And then after I was examined upon it in school, I was comprehensively tested on it. I was fingerprinted, background checked, interpersonal interview. And you think you're going to outsmart me?
Yeah.
And it's funny.
Yes.
It's funny.
Yes.
Tell us a funny story or a joke that you share during your routine. The bank robbery was funny. I didn't know the bank robbery was funny, and he worked at Popeyes in New Orleans.
Yes.
Was it the original Popeyes?
Yes. Yes.
The original Popeyes.
I don't think so, and that's the thing. You're on the stage, and you don't want people's feelings to get hurt, and then you don't want to talk about cases now. So I try to stay away from cases in the law. But like you're saying, I've had a couple cases with doctors. You believe that doctors think they're smarter than lawyers. Is that a fair assessment?
That's what I heard. And I've been dealing with a lot of doctors lately because of a health malady. And I always look at them and I say, look, doc, I'm asking you questions. You're not answering them. I said, I don't know who your other patients are. I said, I'm a lawyer. I'm smarter than you. I got an A in anatomy physiology too. And I'm asking you questions for answers. Answer what the hell I'm saying. So
one of the things I do talk about when I'm on stage sometimes is, you're right, the law, you study, you give people, what's going to happen, you tell them the probability, so on and so forth. In medicine, I remember we went to the doctor, my wife was pregnant. We go, the doctor says, okay, everything looks great. You got about 6 more weeks to go. Sign up for the Lamaze classes. I've looked in it. I've seen it. The child's great. Everything's good. Sign up for Lamaze classes, so on and so forth. I'll see you in about, 4 weeks or so. We say, okay, bye. We get home, wake up the next morning, contractions. Contractions. Like, what was the doctor saying that he didn't understand? And then I realized they might just be guessing. So you get to the hospital. You strap in, you got on all your rubber protective gear on. And I've always joked but this is like 9 months too late, but that's cool, whatever. And so I had my cigars. And I'm ready to go out to wait with the other, person waiting for their baby to deliver. And the doctor, she says to me, where are you going? You need to man up. Come on. I said, you don't give a man up speech to someone who believes he might, fall out while it's happening. Sit down right here. Sit down right here where the opening and the head's coming at you and everything else. And when the baby comes, I want you to catch it and you go to. And I joke when I fly airplanes, they don't say come fly the plane because it takes a certain level of expertise. Spirit Airlines has asked me once to fly the plane, but otherwise, short of Spirit, I've never been asked to fly the plane.
Right.
I do believe to deliver babies, you went to med school, you have a degree, you have all this, how you spread. Why am I, and what kind of insurance do I have that I'm now catching my own child coming out?
Right.
I understand people don't like Obamacare, and I get it, but I shouldn't be catching my own baby out.
Right.
Baby pops out, cut the cord, I catch it, and I'm still thinking, what are you doing, doc? I mean, and why are you getting paid for this? And I'm doing the heavy lifting here. But I go into that, and that was really the great clean version of the story. But yeah, I talk about that in comedy and some other things. Having a grown child, and going to college in my basement. What does that look like? Can you imagine all the things you did in college, but doing it in your mama's and your daddy's basement?
I know, right?
It's just a different world, different time. But I do love my life. I love comedy. I love music and all of that. And it's hard to do that. Yes, I love music as well.
Do you like playing an instrument?
If you call it DJing an instrument.
Oh, DJ. Wait a minute. Judges and lawyers are people too. Comedy, music. All I do is read books, Joe.
Oh, I read the Post every day. I read about 14 magazines every month. I read books I read a book every 2 months. Oh, I am an avid reader / devourer of information, which is why I understand the foreclosure crisis and this and Bitcoins and protectives and criminal and business solutions, so on and so forth. You have to know all of this.
Yep.
In this 24/7 cycle now, people want lawyers available all the time. They want you to know about everything, so on and so forth. And it's a lot, but I know it, or I try to stay on top of it, as you know.
Yeah. You're located in Prince George's County in Upper Marlboro, correct? Hello, can you hear me?
You started fading on me a little bit.
I said you're located in Prince George's County, Upper Marlboro, Maryland, correct?
Yes. So before we get disconnected,
yep.
Wright Esquire, WRIGHTESQ.com. That's my website, wrightesquire.com. If you want to click on that, you can reach me. My address is there in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. I go to DC, Maryland, Western Maryland, Eastern Shore, Southern Maryland, and all of DC. If you want to click and watch some of my YouTube videos, feel free to sit down and watch some of the YouTube videos where I talk about funny stories. I have one on there called He Called You What? Feel free to look at that video, and some other real content-based items like you need a will and you need a lawyer as a criminal and so on and so on and so forth. So feel free to go to the site, call me. My number, 301-375-0485.
How do you spell Wright, ESQ?
Wright Esquire, WRIGHTESQ.com. I tell people Joseph Wright. I'm like the lost Wright brother, Orville, Wilbur, and Joseph. Right. The lost Wright brother, Joseph Wright, WRIGHTESQ.com.
Yeah, in Black History Month just passed, but in case you didn't know, the third brother.
Yes.
The black guy. All the work, got no credit.
Yes, Mrs. Wright was doing things that people don't realize, and I'm the lost brother. I am.
All his plans and his patents. Well, hey, Joe, you have a great story. You have a great practice, and who better to hire for your criminal matter than Joseph Wright?
Yes.
Marlboro, Maryland, Prince George's County. He was a judge. He was a prosecutor. And now he's in private practice to serve all of Maryland. Joe, you have a great story. I'd like to do another podcast episode with you to tell about your background and your route to becoming a lawyer. It's really inspiring. But until then, thanks so much for taking time to chat with us today and share your experience.
Thank you, Sean, so much. Keep doing what you do. All right?
I will, man.
Thank you, sir.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Intelligent questions, interesting interviews, informative insights. Attorney knows best. Attorney knows best.